Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 25th, 2013 meeting of the Glendale City Council, being called order at 6:10. May we have a roll call?
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Here.
Quintero, Tananian, Mayor Weaver.
Here. Flag salute tonight will be led by Council Member Najarian and invocation by City Clerk Artie Kasakian. Please stand.
Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing for the invocation. This evening, we pray for the families of our community and our nation. We are thankful for the stability families provide and the sense of community and responsibility towards our fellow humans they instill. We ask for guidance for all the leaders in our community. We also ask that you watch over our guests who have visited us here from Mexico this evening. May we all work together for the future of one bright, peaceful planet, and also for our city towards continued prosperity and general harmony in our lives, neighborhoods, and homes. Be with this council as they make the difficult decisions required of them this evening. Grant them wisdom as they deliberate on the issues before them. Amen.
And I apologize for starting late, but we had guests here from Tlaquepaque, Mexico, who we haven't seen in a long time, so we kind of ran over. So apologize to people who have been waiting and the audience. With that, may we have your report?
The agenda for the June 25th, 2013 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, June 21st, 2013 on the bulletin board outside City Hall, as well as at 336 Sackett Street, Brooklyn, New York, United States, and 64th Arami Street, Apartment 62 in Yerevan, Armenia.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. Are we being Skyped in now?
Not yet.
They're going to be here. As you know, there's 2 people missing because we're considering the budget tonight. They want to be here to vote. So from the other side of the earth, they're going to be speaking. The other side of the continent, they're going to be speaking to us. Never done this before, so you have to hang in and see if this new technology works. So with that, moving on, what is next, please?
Next is presentation and appointments. At 3A is the agenda previews for the meetings of July 2nd, 2013.
And Mr. Cho?
Yes, sir. On the July 2nd Glendale Housing Authority, we have only the adoption of minutes. On the special Housing Authority and City Council meeting, we have a joint public meeting, Director of Community Services and Parks, reduction in the FY 2013-14 proposed annual action plan for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, and Home Investment Partnership Act, or HOME, programs, and approval of a revised proposed annual action plan. The Council has no items of business on its regular evening agenda that night, and pending an action later on today, that meeting may be canceled.
Correct. Okay, what is next, please?
At 3B is the recognition of the renewed sister city relationship with our partners in Tlaquepaque, Mexico.
Thank you. Efren, are you going to come up with the El Presidente? Is that what you call him?
Presidente, yes. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Efren Olivares. I'm here today as your Mexico
I had to read
sister.
the proclamation first, the mayor's commendation, then you can speak.
I'll make a quick introduction. Yeah.
You want to do that first?
Yeah, let me do that first.
Okay, whatever you want.
As you alluded to, this is our sister city, one of our sister cities from Mexico, Tlaquepaque, who we have kind of a broken relationship over the last few years with the economic situation and so on. But through a chance meeting that Mr. Najarian had with the Presidente Municipal, or their mayor, facilitated them visiting us today and has sort of renewed our enthusiasm in our sister city committee in Glendale to move forward as we used to have our trips and our cultural exchanges. So I'm very thankful to the city for the attention that you have given our guests today, to the various departments in the city. They toured the Water and Power Department today, the recycling center. We will be going to the police station tomorrow. And so we're keeping them very busy. And we plan to send them to Mexico very tired. So with that, I'd like to invite the Presidente Municipal, Alfredo Barba, to introduce himself, say a couple of words, and then after that I'll follow with just quick introductions of the different council members that are visiting us from Tlaquepaque. So with that...
And then I can read the commendation after that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Presidente.
Never-
Speaks a bit of English, but if he needs translation, I'm here.
Yes, I'm gonna talk in Spanish because my English no is too good. Buenas tardes, Mayor Deep Weaver and Council members. Agradecemos su hospitalidad que nos brindan a esta comitiva del Gobierno de San Pedro Tlaquepaque.
He's greeting the council members, the mayor, and he's thankful for the attitude and the attention that you're giving the mayor and his members from Tlaquepaque.
Es de suma importancia para nuestro Gobierno participar activamente en la dinámica de ciudades hermanas, porque lo vemos como el mecanismo de vinculación y coordinación e intercambio de proyectos culturales, artísticos y educacionales.
It is very important to them to have this exchange because it becomes the vehicle for exchange, cultural exchanges, as well as different ideas between the two cities.
Hoy la importancia de ser ciudad hermana es lograr el restablecimiento de las relaciones entre ciudadanos y autoridades para una mutua cooperación.
The purpose of this trip is to renew the relationship between our citizens from the two cities as well as the political entities of the two cities.
Las relaciones traerá en compartir acuerdos que detonen restablecer la presencia activa de ambas ciudades en diferentes temas para impulsar que nuestros ciudadanos participen activamente.
The idea is to establish new relationships and generate solid ideas so that the citizens of both cities can participate and move these ideas forward.
Por esto, con gusto hemos venido para ofrecerles nuestra hospitalidad y que Glendale acuda a San Pedro Tlaquepaque y puedan contar con un enlace directo en el cual nuestros ciudadanos tengan interacción.
And it is with great pleasure that they come here to extend an invitation to Glendale to visit Tlaquepaque and have the personal attention of the citizens of Tlaquepaque.
Para Tlaquepaque es importante gestionar acuerdos que detonen la promoción turística, difusión de la cultura y sus tradiciones.
For Tlaquepaque, it is very important that they exchange programs that enhance their tourism as well as the cultural exchanges between the two communities.
A nivel gobierno tenemos el interés de explotar un modelo de comunidades en conjunto, en el cual podamos compartir experiencias de aprendizaje y trabajo para solucionar problemas en el aspecto social, cultural e intercambios profesionales, comerciales y técnicos para desarrollar proyectos.
At the government level, it is important for them to exchange ideas and programs that expand the tourism and the individual programs of each city so we can all learn from each other and help both cities to move forward.
Confío en que estos lazos de hermandad que hoy restablecemos generarán progreso y desarrollo a nuestra comunidad.
And we hope that these programs and these ideas will help develop both communities jointly.
Quiero agradecer a Ara, a Palmira Pérez, a Efraín Flores y su esposa, a Celina y a todos los miembros del Comité de Ciudades Hermanas por su hospitalidad. Muchas gracias.
And it's thankful to the council, to Palmira Reyes, who is a particular person that helped make this happen today, myself, of course, and thank you for your attention.
Gracias.
So I'm going to bring up really quick the other...
Then I can do the commendation. I'm doing all this backwards.
They're just going to introduce themselves and let you know who they are.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Sergio Silva, regidor.
Council member.
Council member.
Buenas tardes, gracias por su hospitalidad, Mayor Dave Weaver. Yo soy el doctor Roberto Albarrán, regidor del municipio de San Pedro Tlaquepaque.
Also council member.
Mi nombre es Elías Navarro y mi función es City Clerk.
Similar.
He's the RD of Tlaquepaque.
Thank you so much. I'm Eduardo Reyes, President of Sister Cities Committee of Tlaquepaque. Thank you so much.
And now I may read
Now
it.
you may do it. I feel like I'm running this show. Right?
I know, it feels that way. It's the mayor's commendation to the city of Tlaquepaque in recognition of our renewed sister city partnership between the city of Glendale and Tlaquepaque, Mexico. On behalf of the city council and the city staff, we look forward to a long and prosperous relationship. I'll bring it down, but just wanted people to know when I was the mayor back in '06, I had occasion to go down to Tlaquepaque almost a year ago to the day down there. And we had a great time. We hit it in time for the Ceramics Festival, which is the biggest one, I guess, in Mexico. That's where all the ceramics come for competition. I know I brought home 2 or 3 large boxes of ceramics that I purchased down there. It was a whole different cultural experience, and even though I couldn't communicate with them, we had plenty of guides from Glendale that filled the void. So I look forward to being able to come there again.
And also, right after the commendation, we're going to show a short video that shows what Tlaquepaque is all about. So in closing, I want to again thank the council members and the city for all the support. I also want to thank my committee members that are here tonight. This wouldn't happen without their help. And so I also want to tell the public out there, anybody who's interested in joining my committee, our committee, to help move this forward, please contact the city, Dan Bell, and he'll get a hold of me, and we'll make sure you participate with us. So with that, thank you very much.
Everyone, if you just stay there a minute. for those of you who don't know where Tlaquepaque is, maybe many of you through songs would have heard of Guadalajara. This is right next door to Guadalajara. And while we're a population of 194,000, what's the population of Tlaquepaque?
850,000.
850,000. It's just a suburb of Guadalajara in essence. And our budget's $737 million, and theirs is
120 million.
120 million. Go figure. They have a big city, much larger than ours. And it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope I can come down again.
You're all invited, and we'll let you know when our next trip is, which will probably be next year for the ceramic arts competition.
Yeah, ceramics art competition in June of each year. It's really worth seeing. It takes up many buildings that you have to go look through. Thank you again, Efren, for coming.
I'm going to be
Thank
your
you.
translator, Mr. Weaver.
Well, thank you. That's fine. That's better than us being the old people's home.
Cultural interpreter for you.
Well, that's better than the old people's home, right? Where you said we're going to be. Okay, thank you very much. I know you have other places to go. You've been getting a tour of the city today, and you will tomorrow too. So, gracias. Thank you for coming. You can leave any time. Don't feel bothered. Okay, what is next, please?
3C is appointment of board and commission members, and I should mention that at this time we do have council members Sinanian and Friedman joining us via phone from their respective
By
locations.
phone, not Skype.
Yes, by telephone. They're conference calling in at this point. At 3C, appointment of board and commissioner members, these were the nominations of Councilmember Friedman made on June 11, 2013. C1 is Terry Deaver, Arts and Culture Commission. C2 is David Gavorkian, Audit Committee. C3 is Romello Markarian, CDBG Advisory Committee. C4 is Vrej Mardian, Design Review Board. C5 is Terry Chan, GWP Commission. C6 is Arlene Vidor, Historic Preservation Commission. C7 is Peter Fouad, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. C8 is Stephanie Landrigan, Planning Commission. C9 is Paula Devine, Commission on the Status of Women. And C10 is Alec Bartrosuf, Traffic and Parking Commission.
Okay, the way we're going to do this after consultation, make sure I'm okay. Instead of taking the time to read all 40 of these resumes, going over them one at a time, we'll take each individual council persons, all 10 together as a group, unless there is a card to speak on an individual who has been nominated, in which case that one will be pulled and dealt with separately. So for 3C, I'd like to pull number 10.
And Mr. Weaver, I believe that the public can go online and review the applications.
Yes,
correct?
yes. Okay, you two that are in Yerevan,
I'm getting a text now.
you're not there?
John tells me we just lost Zare from Yerevan.
Well, that's okay.
And we just lost Laura in New York.
Too bad.
She has submitted her names, however, so I think she stands ready to have the council discuss and debate it.
So I'll move Ms. Friedman's nominations,
1 through 9.
3C 1 through 9.
And I will second them.
Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Harrow,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. And read number 10 in again.
Number 10 is Alec Bartrosuf, Traffic and Parking Commission.
Thank you. The reason I pulled it is I will not be voting for Alec, and I need to explain why. I've read all the resumes, and his resume states that his goal as a transportation and parking commissioner is to work with local businesses, residents, and planners on solutions that are long-term. Far too often, we plan with a microscope, and the greater vision of our city is lost. I want to be sure we look at issues that come before the commission with the greater vision in mind for what we want this city to be, not what it has been, and not what it is today, but rather in the future. And I do not see that that is the role of a commissioner to go out and work in the public as a surrogate council member, because that's our role. So I will be voting against him. He's a great guy, but that's not a commissioner's job. So with that, a roll call.
motion?
I will nominate Alec. I think he's the right person for the job, and obviously agree with a lot of his views on transportation, especially bicycles, and actually part of the bicycle master plan.
Okay, with that roll call. Wait, we need a second.
I will second it with the proviso that the actual commission is the Transportation and Parking Commission, right?
Traffic.
Yeah,
Roll call.
yes.
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Mannion, Mayor Weaver.
No. Okay, next.
Just for the record, that motion does pass,
2-1.
given that the other
Yeah.
two council members are not on part of the meeting.
Next, please.
3D is appointments of board and commissioner members made by Councilmember Najarian on June 18, 2013. D1 is Arlette Derho-Vanessian for Arts and Culture Commission. D2 is Zaria Amirian for Audit Committee. D3 is Vacha Tashian for CDBG Advisory Committee. D4 is Art Simonian, Design Review Board. D5 is Matthew Hale, GWP Commission. D6 is Vartan Garpetian, Historic Preservation Commission. D7 is Ara Kalfayan, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. D8 is Eric Yasayan, Planning Commission. D9 is Seda Khojayan, Commission on Status of Women. And D10 is Maro Yakubian, Traffic and Parking Commission.
Thank you. I have a card to pull 3D6. Is there a motion on the others?
I'll move the balance of 3D, 1 through 10, exclusive of 6.
Who is 6?
That is Vartan Karapetian.
Okay, I'll second it.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Mannion, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Please read 6 back in again.
D6 is Vartan Garpetian for Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you. I have one speaker. 2 minutes. Sean Bursell.
Good evening, Mayor Weaver and members of the council. My name is Sean Bursell, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society, on whose board I serve, regarding the proposed appointments to the Historic Preservation Commission this evening. The Glendale Historical Society enthusiastically supports the reappointment of Commissioners Lorna Vartanian and Arlene Vidor. Commissioners Vartanian and Vidor each have strong backgrounds in historic preservation. They've served the city well and demonstrated thoughtfulness and good judgment in the issues brought before the Commission. However, the Glendale Historical Society strongly opposes the nomination of Vartan Garpetian to serve on the Historic Preservation Commission. It's extremely unusual for us to take this position, but this is an unusual circumstance. To be appointed to the Historic Preservation Commission, individuals are to have a demonstrated interest, competence, and knowledge in historic preservation. It's not clear how Mr. Garpetian meets this requirement. Although we understand that he has stated that he has been involved in the restoration and preservation of over 25 character homes, a number of which could be registered as a historic property, fixing up and flipping vintage homes for profit does not necessarily mean one has expertise in historic preservation. And it is not simply that Mr. Garpetian has been absent from the preservation movement in Glendale, but rather he has been a vocal opponent of it. Mr. Garpetian spoke out against Glendale's award-winning historic districting ordinance when the City Council considered and enacted the ordinance in 2006. It seems inconceivable to us that someone who fundamentally disagrees with a core function of the Historic Preservation Commission would be appointed to serve on it. Finally, Mr. Garpetian's involvement with the deceptive Save Brand Library campaign several years back should be cause enough to question his fitness to serve on the Historic Preservation Commission. We therefore urge you to reject the nomination. Thank you.
Mr. Najarian.
I did receive many emails of concern by the Glendale Historical Society about Mr. Garpetian's abilities and qualifications to serve, as well as a historical event regarding Brand Library. He has satisfied my concerns that he has the qualifications to serve on the Historical Preservation Commission. I, however, have instructed Mr. Garpetian to have a meeting with the Glendale Historical Society before the convening of the next commission meeting, so they can exchange the information that I learned from Mr. Garpetian and his position on historical preservation. To state that he is against historical preservation as a blanket statement, I do not feel reflects his position. However, I do invite a dialogue between the two groups. That being said, the job of the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the other commissions, given one or two exceptions, is to provide advice and direction to council. And I would like to let everyone know that the buck stops here. I have oftentimes gone against the recommendations of my commissioners in their roles on their respective commissions. I do appreciate a difference of opinion. In my mind, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that may oftentimes lead to a better discussion and a more rigorous discussion of the issues. Also, for all my commissioners, I have instructed them and advised them that in the event that I am dissatisfied with their service, that I will ask for their resignation and hope that that request will be honored and not brought before the council for a council discussion. So that being said, again, in summary, I have read the emails from the Historical Society. I have spoken to Mr. Garpetian, and I would like both sides to get together and have a sit-down and report back to me before the next Historical Preservation Committee convenes.
And I would hope that the Historical Society will agree to meet with Mr. Garpetian. I'd hate to get the word back to you that you refuse to do it. Sean, thank you. You ask the hard questions now when you sit with him, okay? I want to hear back with Mr.
Thank you. I do appreciate you coming forward, Sean. So I will...
I guess the commission, he can talk to them when he's appointed.
Right.
Okay.
So
is there
3D6.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interrupt for 1 second.
Oh, we're back.
That is Councilmember Sinanian.
It's Councilmember Sinanian.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I think we're voting on Councilmember Najarian's nominations for the commission, and from what I heard, he's withholding Mr. Garpetian's nomination. Is that correct?
Just his. We already voted on the others for Mr.
Yes. Oh, you already have. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Okay. With that,
He understood what the story is.
The nominations that Mr. Najarian were made were approved, except for D6, which is going to be voted upon now after the
yes, nomination.
That is for Barton Garpetian for historic
Is there a
preservation.
second? Or
It doesn't need a second, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I have a comment.
Oh.
Okay. I also received the emails and actually spoke on the phone with some of the members. My feeling is that every council member...
It's coming from outer space.
That is Councilmember Sinanian actually typing in.
Okay. Is he still with us?
Councilmember Sinanian?
Huh. Sinanian's there. That's one. And he's on the other side of the earth.
We should have said at the outset of this meeting that we may be experiencing some bumps on the road along the way.
Now, this is the first time
Try this for the
with this technology.
I actually see him on the screen. Okay, Mr. Sinanian, I'm...
Oh, hi.
Good evening, everyone.
Couldn't you get brighter light in there? You're in the shadows.
How about this?
That doesn't help much. Well, that's a little better.
He looks like Snowden, actually. Snowden next to him. All right, Mr. Sinanian, so my feeling is that each council member appoints the person that they feel is best for a particular commission or board, and that nomination reflects the council member, good or bad. And so I have generally supported all of the appointees, all of the nominations from the different council members. Quite often, I don't feel that they will particularly do a good job at whatever commission they've been appointed to. I've always had problems with commissioners that have outside employment that may reflect on the particular board that they serve on. However, the other council members or the council member that picked that person, I think, is entitled to, and so that's that's why I will be voting for Mr. Garapetian. I do think it's an excellent idea that he meet with the historic preservation, well, the historical society, not only here in Glendale, but in the Crescenta Valley, et cetera, get to know the people, obviously meet with the other commissioners, and then the whatever, the public will decide whether he's going to be a good commissioner or not. He does state that he has experience in working on restoring historic homes, et cetera. So I will be voting Mr. Garapetian.
And I just like that people understand, back in 1997 when I first got on, the method was, in a rotational order, 2 council members met with the candidates. They selected the candidate in private and made a recommendation to the full council. As you see today, the whole council votes in the open. So it's supposed to be a much more fair approach to it. And as has been said, each one of us is responsible for the people that we nominate. So I tend to think it's a better way of doing things. So with that, Mr. Najarian, you want to do it after the vote?
Let's do it after the vote. I was going to ask my commissioners to stand up and be recognized.
Okay.
Let's do the vote first, Mr. Mayor.
Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Arrow,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. With that, Mr. Najarian?
So will all my commissioners please stand up, and I'd like to thank you. I see Matthew Hale, Seda Khojayan, Eric Yasayan, of course, Mr. Garpetian. Thank you for volunteering for this job. It is thankless, almost as thankless as being on council, but I'm sure that you'll do good work, and thank you for devoting your time to the city.
You're all fired. You can leave now if you want. You don't have to stay here and watch the rest of the show. It's only the budget. Okay. What is next, please?
3E is board and commission nomination assignments for council member Quintero.
Okay, since my retirement and and vacation of this dais that I thought was a permanent situation, those boards and commissioners basically went to Mr. Sinanian. He got to nominate whoever he wanted. So all of my nominations will be for a 1-year period, and I am pretty much getting the same group of people together to serve on the boards and commissions, with a couple of exceptions. So my nominations are for Arts and Culture, Armand Kevanian; Audit Committee, Cindy Vasquez; CDBG, Leila Ramirez; Design Review Board, Alan Malikian; Glendale Water and Power, Armin Ajanian; Historic Preservation, Mike Morgan; Parks and Recreation, Rodney Kahn; Planning Commission, Greg Astorian; Traffic and Parking, Armando Gonzalez. So next week we'll vote on those nominees, and I'll have one more name to submit.
If indeed we do pass a motion later in the agenda to cancel the next 2 meetings, they will be voted on the 16th, just so you know, if the measure passes. Okay, thank you. That's all of yours. Next, please.
3F is appointment of board and commission members This is the nominations of Councilmember Sinanian made on June 18, 2013. F1 is Hurar Sharikian Arts and Culture Commission. F2 is Mike Velasquez Audit Committee. F3 is Zanku Armenian for CDBG Advisory Committee. F4 is Ryan Sarkisian for Design Review Board. F5 is Manuel Carmago Jr., Glendale Water and Power Commission. F6 is Lorna Vartanian Historic Preservation Commission. F7 is Alex Wu Parks Recreation and Community Services Commission. F8 is Leonard Manukian Planning Commission. F9 is Ara Kurchin Traffic and Parking Commission.
Is there a motion on those?
So moved.
Wait for a second.
Doesn't
There's no
require
need
a
for a
second.
second.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Hi. And Mr. Sinanian, you have not nominated anybody yet for the Committee on the Status of Women. Are you doing that tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I am not doing that tonight. I just need a couple more weeks to make nomination for that position.
So if the following measure passes, it'll be on the 16th.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Next item is City Council and Staff Comments.
No.
I got one more. Mr. Weaver.
I'm sorry, the next item
slightly.
is, I'm sorry, there was a little confusion because I don't know if Councilmember Quintero did you make a commission on status of women appointment? Okay, so you have not as well. Next appointment would be of Daniel Herman to the Design Review Board. This was made on June 18, 2013 by Councilmember Weaver.
And may I just make one statement? Since I didn't have to run for re-election and I didn't get elected treasurer, there's no reason for me to reappoint anybody. They will continue service until the end of my term in April of 2015, unless I choose to remove one of them before then. I did call Mr. Zarifian, who I did not reappoint to it, and I apologize that I had to take one over the other, because they're both great architects, and I felt very bad that I had to do to one or the other. So with that, I nominated Daniel Herman. So, is there a motion? I mean, is there a nomination?
I'll nominate Mr. Herman.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Thank you.
Next item is City Council and Staff Comments.
I can't see your hand out there, Mr. Sinanian. Are you planning on saying anything? His hand was up.
No.
Enjoy the weather.
How's the weather?
No, I said enjoy the weather. I don't know what it is. How is it?
It's hot. It's getting hot.
Well, it's supposed to be 100 here by the weekend.
Oh wow. Okay.
Stay there. Stay there. Okay, any other comments from my colleagues? Mr. Najarian.
Along with Mr. Quintero and many other elected officials throughout the county, we had a groundbreaking for a Metrolink station adjacent to your airport that you guys oversee, the Bob Hope Airport. This is a station which will serve the Antelope Valley line. And, of course, its primary usefulness will be to those folks coming from the Antelope Valley who wish to disembark at Bob Hope Airport. But there's also a benefit to those in Glendale, Burbank, and downtown L.A., because there are now double the number of trains which are available to take you from the train station, whichever train station you depart from, Union Station or Glendale or even a Burbank, to get you to Bob Hope Airport, leave your car at home, don't deal with the parking expenses, and there will be a shuttle which will be available. Of course, we just did the groundbreaking, so it's not ready yet, but there is an urgency to have that done to help boost the ridership at one of the finest run airports, regional airports in the entire United States, Bob Hope Airport.
The best.
Well, I was going to say Antelope Valley and Santa Clarita. Santa Clarita line. It was a great day for Southern California, really, for regional transportation. And in addition to that, I want to welcome Bishop Muradian. I attended a function. There is a bishop in the Armenian Catholic Church, a wonderful man who served all over the world, and I'm looking forward perhaps for him to come and give the benediction one of these days to open the city council. And then I celebrated the birthday of an 80-year-old who looks like he's a 50-year-old, George Bogosian, a civil engineer who's worked for the city for many years, done numerous projects, and it was great being with him and all of the honors that he received that night.
Thank you. Just two corrections. They're asking him to give the invocation, not the benediction, right?
I knew when I said benediction, that wasn't appropriate.
And according to the press, you're on the airport commission. Didn't know that, did you? Well, that's what the paper said. Well, with that, any other comments? If not, let's go on. What's next?
Next is the consent items. The following routine and may be acted upon by one motion. A member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Have no cards.
Move the consent calendar.
Second?
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Next, please.
Next item is oral communications. This is a portion reserved for 3-minute community event announcements. The full 5-minute portion will be revisited at the conclusion of all city business.
Good night, city staff. A lot of the city staff always comes in case there's any questions on consent items. Hope you appreciate them all sticking around just in case. Okay, I have one card, Leon Mayor. The 3-minute portion.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the council.
No. That's a third correction.
Weaver is the mayor. I'm not on the airport commission.
That's two for you tonight. Go ahead, Leon.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver.
I'm USC, Trojan, you know, the horse.
I have a couple of announcements to make.
Boy, I'm cutting into your time. Better start it over, Artie. I talk too much. Okay, go.
I didn't plan to talk at length about the program we're having Saturday, 2 o'clock at the library, which will involve a program for children honoring a famous Mexican artist. When I found out that our sister city of Tlaquepaque was here tonight, I talked to some of them. I gave them some of our flyers, and they were flattered to know that what we said about our getting together, we respect it and act on it by having actual activities honoring Mexican people. So they were very pleased with that, and I gave them copies of the flyers. So that's free. Come Saturday, 2 o'clock, bring your children, your grandchildren. It'll be an interesting program. Now, this is the last call for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Maggie McGuire, a veteran performer with over 350 performances at various festivals, universities, and music venues across the United States in the past 3 years. Her song, The Girl You Want to Be, was featured on MTV's The Real World and at St. Thomas in August 2012. Many more of her songs can be heard on MTV, including Worst Prom Ever, and she has a famous song called Good Morning and Good Night. And we're just lucky as heck to have her tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the library. And she's going to bring her partners. His name is Shane Henry. She plays the piano. Shane plays the guitar. And I promise everybody a great event tomorrow night at the library to see Maggie McClure, famous entertainer.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, we have no more cards. Next, please.
7, adoption of ordinances. 7A is an ordinance amending Chapter 13.44 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995, adopting a feed-in tariff.
Okay.
This was introduced June 18, 2013 by Councilmember Quintero. 7A1 is a resolution adopting regulations to implement the feed-in tariff program. A2 is a resolution approving execution of a standard form power purchases agreement and a standard form interconnection agreement.
Okay, I was busy signing papers. So before we take that one, in order to develop the budget in the sequence it needs to be, we're going to be doing 8C, 8D, 8E, and see, the public hearing is after 7.
Yes, sir.
So-
The public hearing will be in conjunction with 7A.
Yes.
Correct.
So first 8C.
Just based on the trouble that we're having, I don't know if Councilmember Friedman is with us, but in the chance that we lose her and/or Mr. Sinanian, we would like to do all the budget-related items as quickly as we can. That pleases the council.
Okay, we're going to go with 8C.
8C. Thank you. Director of Finance regarding annual Glendale Water and Power transfer and discussion of Tri-Cities revenue comparison. C1 is a resolution reducing the percentage of operating revenues to be transferred from Glendale Water and Power Electric to the General Reserve Fund for fiscal year 2012-13.
Okay, speaker cards. Harry Zavos, 2 minutes.
Would you like me to do the presentation first, sir?
Oh,
I know we've taken so much out of order today. I'm sorry about that.
go ahead, 8C.
All righty. We do have something just a little bit unique based on the annual action that we take by way of transferring GWP revenue. And if we do get Councilmember Friedman on the phone, then I imagine she has to announce that she's in? Correct. Okay. So just with that caveat, we may get broken up going forward. What we have is this brief presentation, and it stems from a couple of things. One, based on the ongoing discussion that we have regarding the general fund transfer and GWP, but then also, as we've gone through the GWP proposed rate adjustments for the coming fiscal year and the community meetings that we've had last 3 weeks, and then in this week going forward, I can tell you that after folks look at what the rates are, they sit and talk about the rate calculator. Usually, very often, the discussion turns to the issue of the transfer, because so many folks have heard so many things, and unfortunately not very many of them are factual. So what we want to do today when we take up this matter of the GWP transfer is to provide some context and look at essentially the 3 questions that we get as we talk to folks about what the transfer is and what the transfer isn't.
Laura Friedman?
Hello. Yes, I'm sorry. They just tapped me in, I guess.
Oh, good. We're just getting to the meat of the agenda.
Good evening. I'm sorry. It got disconnected a few times, and so hopefully I'll be able to stay on.
And you're in New York.
Yes, I am.
Good. Okay, Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. So those 3 questions, first and foremost, is the transfer. Can we do it? Is it lawful? And I'll have Mr. Garcia talk about that. And then the second question being, why do we transfer? Why does this transfer take place? And then third, even if folks understand that it is lawful, that the evolution of our cost and revenue base is effectively what it is, then what are the trade-offs? What if after all that, understanding all of that, we just don't want to do the transfer? What happens then? And so we'll endeavor tonight to provide a brief presentation to give you that context. So what you see here is just generally an introduction. We'll talk about the transfer requirement. As I said, Mr. Garcia will cover that. We'll talk about the history of electric and water transfers, because oftentimes those get lumped together. And people oftentimes will comment about what happens to the cities around us and in those cities. And so we want to, again, provide you some amount of context there and look at it and slice and dice that information in different ways to tell
the best, most accurate story of what we do, why we do it, how it gets done. We'll talk about the proposed resources appropriations and some hypothetical budget impacts. So after all that's said and done, if you have any questions about the financials, certainly Mr. Elliott can address those as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Garcia to talk a little bit about the transfer requirements, how we got to where we are, and what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Mr. Mayor, members of council, we've had this discussion a couple times before, but what is up on the PowerPoint is the actual charter language, and it does require that the city transfer 25% of operating revenues from electric and water to the city's general fund, and it uses the term general reserve fund, and I can discuss that if there are questions about it. And essentially what it does, it requires that the transfer be made at 25% unless the city council elects at the end of the fiscal year to reduce that amount of that transfer in accordance with the needs of the utility. And so what we've done, as you know, is that the city no longer transfers any water revenue to the general fund and does transfer electric revenue. This year I think it will be in the range of 12.7% based on the city's needs and the utilities needs, or primarily the utilities needs. I think one of the issues of debate obviously is around the term, whether it's operating or reserve funds that are transferred. The language in the charter is very clear. It's operating revenue. That's a very specific defined term in the industry and was a very specific expressed term as used by the drafters of that provision when they put this into the charter. It's very specific to all the revenues, exclusive of wholesale revenues. Doesn't include the amount left after expenses. It's very clear that it has to be based on the percentage of operating revenues. So that's what our figure is based on. With respect to whether it comes from the reserve fund or if it comes from the utilities operating fund, the reason that, again, as we've explained before, the reason that the revenues are transferred from the operating revenue fund is because in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, that's what's required. We're at the end of the fiscal year this year. The money that we have for the transfer, we could put that into GOEP's reserve, or in our case the surplus fund, and then make that transfer. There would be no difference other than we've done one more journal entry. But the big difference would be we will not be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We would get an audit letter, and that would affect us on a broader level than this particular issue. So that's what the requirement is. And again, we've had this discussion before. Since 2011, the city has not transferred any water revenue fund. The transfer has been exclusively from the electric fund. So that's the genesis of the transfer. And let me point out too that the legislative history on the transfer was it was very detailed in respect to the fact that the utility, like most utilities that are started by cities, do not pay property taxes or any fees that a privately owned concern would provide. And so this was meant to provide a stable revenue base for the city as the jurisdiction that's created the utility, started it. And whether we call it a payment in lieu of taxes or a return, it's not at all dissimilar from any of the other utility transfers that other municipally owned utilities pay in the state of California.
So as Mr. Garcia had indicated, here is a 10-year look at the electric operating revenues for GWP, going back to fiscal year 0203, and what the transfer would be if, in fact, we transferred at 25% as contained and featured in the charter. Now, here in this column is what we actually transfer to the general fund from electric and what that represents as a percentage of revenue. Our target is here in this 9.2 range. I think the thing to take away here, the idea, is that you see that this number started at 13.7 over the last couple of years when we really started to focus on this issue, and we've dropped it down to the going forward number in 13-14 as proposed would be 12.2. That is a market difference and a reflection of the council's strategy to basically glide down to reduce that amount because that has an ultimate impact on the way that we do business for GWP. But it is important also when you take a look at what the revenue was here and what the revenue is here in that 8-year span, I think that is, that they are relatively flat. And you see the bump in the economy here and then the fall in the economy
here. The idea being that the costs continue to rise, but the revenues of the utility have remained flat because those revenues haven't been increased outside of the rate adjustment charge, but the actual non-pass-through revenues have not been increased for, I believe it's 06, 07. So the idea here is that this is all happening in the context of the rate discussions out in the community, but this is a question that comes up in the discussion that we want to have. By the same token, Mr. Garcia had referenced what happens with the water fund. And so here again, you see operating revenues. You see what the transfer would have been at 25. You see what the transfer actually was in reality. And most notably, you see that there isn't anything here from the 10-11 fiscal year because the council opted to not transfer those funds. Now, some folks have made a point of saying, well, you couldn't transfer those funds. That's not entirely accurate. The council could transfer those funds, but do so at their own risk. The organization would at its own risk. There are a number of agencies that continue to transfer those revenues and will continue to do so until they deem it's not in their interest to do so. But to make the blanket statement that you can't is incorrect in my estimation. A better assessment of the situation that the council took a full measure of what the statutory and legal environment was and decided not to do it. And I'll show you in a couple slides what that means. Now, we talked about the electrical, we talked about the water. Here is combined because this is Glendale Water and Power. So here are, over that same period of time, your electric and water operating revenues to transfer at 25%, but the actual transfer that the council has authorized over the years. Again, you see where we were here over the last couple of years when we really started to focus on bringing that down. The takeaway here is that the transfer as a percentage of operating revenues from GWP as it impacts rates is in this 9% range. That's important because that industry average over the broader utility industry is going to be in this area, not up here in this. And so you can see that we steadily have brought that down as a matter of fiscal discipline, and our goal is, again, to seek that glide down even further. Let's talk a little bit about what happens in the neighborhood. By way of profile, Glendale is 30.58 square miles. Burbank is a little less or a little more than half our size. And Pasadena is almost a little over two-thirds of our size. Number of parcels, whether they're developed or not, the number of parcels, 42 as you see, 28, almost 29,000 in Burbank, almost 39,000 in Pasadena. So you see, by far, we are the larger city. And if you recall just from the discussions on the feed-in tariff that you looked at last week and you're considering again tonight, we are the larger utility also in the context of the number of customers. That's why we have to do a feed-in tariff. And our two neighbors do not because they're smaller than what the threshold in the law allows. The idea here, though, is that you see in the valuations that the net taxable value, $18 billion for us, $18.4 billion for almost $19 billion for us, $18.4 billion for Burbank, $21.9, almost $22 billion for Pasadena. Very much a function of, you see the topography and the geography of Glendale. We have good portions of that 30.58 square miles that are unbuildable, undevelopable mountainous areas, and that makes, although we have the larger area, that valuation is impacted as a reflection of that. Just as important, maybe even more important, is the breakdown in the percentage of land use. 85.4% of Glendale is residential, as opposed to 50.2% of Burbank and almost 70% of Pasadena. Why is that important? Well, in the context of utilities and utility operations, that revenue base that comes from commercial and industrial users draws much more, they draw more power, and that has a reflection in what the rate structure, not the rate structure, but the revenues that come off of those customers, how all that fits together so that they are pulling with relatively fewer parcels and the same valuation. You can see what the impact is on, you will see what the impact is in terms of what the revenues that they generate. Moreover, when you look at commercial, we only have about 10.5% of our area is commercial, meaning commercial retail office. double that for Burbank, which again is a little over half our size, and double that for Pasadena, which is 2/3 of our size. Industrial, less than 1% of our area is industrial, 10% for Burbank, and 2%, a modest amount for Pasadena. Median home values, because if you want to look at this and say, well, maybe the homes in Pasadena are just so much more expensive, and that speaks to this issue of the net taxable value, well, we wanted to slice and dice the information and look at, now, we're all pretty close in terms of what that median home value is for detached single-family homes. So you can kind of see how we're alike, and you can kind of see how we're different. Well, now add in there a layer of further understanding that when you look at under property tax revenues, when you look at property tax revenues, you can see here, and especially when folks in the meetings I've been to, people say, why pay my property taxes? What a lot of folks don't realize is that the large majority of your property tax goes to the County of Los Angeles and the school districts, either directly or through the Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund in this red area, as well as in this area here, the yellow. You may recall in the 1990s when the state couldn't fund education any longer, they took the money literally, just outright swiped it from cities and counties to give to education to fund their obligation. What that means, however, is that Glendale gets 13.57 cents of that property tax dollar. Why is that important? Well, because Burbank gets 18.47 cents and Pasadena gets 21.09 cents. That is important because these rates are locked in time going back to 1978 with the passage of Prop 13. That landmark legislation, that initiative, locked in those rates for forever until Prop 13 gets raised, which probably isn't going to happen anytime too soon, as it's the third rail of politics. And my argument isn't that Prop 13 needs to be changed, only that we need to recognize what it means to our revenue base as an organization. So, when we look at Glendale, population, again, the larger of the three cities, but you look at the property tax that comes off, isn't quite what you might expect for the size of our city, the acreage as well, or the square miles as well as the number of parcels, as opposed to what you see here in Burbank, or especially here in Pasadena. Sales tax. Remember the slide that we showed that was a reflection of how much of our area is available for commercial retail development, that 10% juxtaposed to the other two cities. That you see that based here, where we are built out, number one, and we're landlocked with respect to what we can develop in these areas for purposes of sales tax. Well, those are the number 1 and 2 general fund resources for the city of Glendale, followed by number 3, the general fund transfer from GWP. You also see here the utility user tax that was approved by the voters. And again, while we have, and you'll see the breakdown of what makes up that utility user tax, but I think it's interesting to note that with more customers, we draw less money than what we do over in Pasadena. TOT, they simply have more hotels. We're working on that through our economic development program. We can't really compare parking tax with Burbank because we don't have a parking tax. They do. Pasadena does not. We don't have a business license tax. Burbank does, Pasadena does, and you can see what it draws in those two cities. And then permits, licenses, and other revenues, primarily state and federal grants. The point here is that it shows you what the resources are for those general funds, and again, drawing back to the size of the organization, the scope of the services that we provide, and a distillation of what the revenue base is for these three organizations, and you start to get some interesting comparisons. When you add in our transfer, which again, that $20.8 million for the 12-13 year, you know, we're reducing this for the year going forward, that gets you to that $165 million number for our general fund. When you look at the electric transfer and the water transfer, that gets into 141. And when you look over at our friends in Pasadena, 14 million from electric, 3.5 in water, gets them to $198 million in that general fund. Well, let's talk a little bit about utility user tax. You can see what our rates are for telecom, for video, electric, water, and gas. You can see how they compare with the other two. That speaks back to this number here, this revenue that is drawn. And then the other tax, occupancy tax, we both, you can see that's the bed tax, 10% for us, 10 in Burbank, 12.11 in Pasadena. Parking tax, we don't have it, it's there. Business license tax, we don't have it, but you can see how it breaks down in those two other those other two cities. And when you see the comparison on the water and power transfer, Again, 9.6%, 5% coming off of Burbank and Pasadena. So what does all that mean? Well, again, the way that our base has developed, people say, well, why do you, even if the transfer is allowed, even if it's allowed by the charter, it's legal under Prop 218, which specifically deals with water and not power, even if it's lawful under Prop 26, because Prop 26 looks prospective and not retrospective, and thus, because we haven't changed the formula on the manner in which we calculate that transfer, we don't have a problem with Prop 26. Even if all that is true, why do we have the transfer? Well, the transfer has evolved as a mechanism for funding the general fund, and you can see it here. Per capita, and you take that 193, the 104, and the 138,000 respectively in those populations, and you equalize out with the property tax, it starts to become readily apparent that even though we have that higher assessed value or the same assessed valuation, because Burbank's getting considerably more per dollar in property tax, they actually get $260 per resident versus $226. And in Pasadena, it's considerably higher still. When you look at the sales tax, not what each individual Glendalian pays, but rather what the total amount of sales tax divided by the number of residents is, 162 versus 215 and 226 in our neighboring cities. Now, people say, well, you have the Brand Boulevard of cars, and you have the Americana at Brand, and you have the Glendale Galleria, but generally speaking, that's what we have. Everything else is considerably smaller. There is no major power center in Glendale because, again, we just don't have the area and the land zone for that location. Not only, even if we did now, we don't have the redevelopment tools to make that happen. But you see, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but you look at what the revenue base is per capita, $748 versus $1,270, $1,300. And when you mix in what the transfers are from our utility, well, you start to get an idea of where we are and the challenges that we face. And that's not to say woe is Glendale, because we've made it through the recession and we're still delivering on all of our value propositions to our residents and businesses. But there is a real world impact in terms of the way that we actually draw revenue out of the various business lines that we have, the revenues that we derive from all of the property tax, sales tax, utility user, TOT, and the general fund transfer. What does all that mean? Well, that means that basically we're balanced in this current year, because if you say, okay, I understand that it's lawful, I understand that the charter allows it, I understand why it exists, because that's the way that Glendale's revenue base is shaped up over these last 100 years, I still don't like it. So if you say you still don't like it, there's a 20 going forward for the 13-14 fiscal year, a $20.6 million gap if we were to simply remove that. Now, some folks would say, well, why don't you go and just have a special election and see if folks will support a $20 million parcel tax. And indeed, the council can do that, but I guess my question would be, why would the council do that? I can hop on one leg all day long, but just because I can doesn't mean I ought to or that it makes any sense. The idea here is that if you are going to make that cut and throw caution to the wind, it's very easy to do it academically and very difficult, I would submit, to do it in a way where you actually have to run an organization and make policy for a city. So, if we are going to be equally cavalier and just throwing out $20 million from the general fund, then we can start to make value judgments about what it is that we want to cut. If you wanted to get to a $20.6 million reduction in the general fund, you could cut the entire library department, all of the branches, the entire library arts culture program, 100%, get rid of 49 bodies, and do the same with the Community Services and Parks program at $9.5 million, 100% of it, 65 bodies, and about 8% of fire and about 5% of police. Altogether, you're dealing with about 131 to 134 full-time equivalent positions. At the same time, you've seen this, and you'll see the slide again under Mr. Elliott's presentation, but here are all the general fund budgets. Administrative services, finance, and all the folks there, $5 million. City attorney, you can only fire Mr. Garcia and me once. that number has to continue to turn over and mean something. So you could get rid of all administrative services, all of the city attorney's budget, all of Mr. Kasakian and his folks, all the city treasurer, and probably nearly all of community development and get there. Or you can start to get rid of 2/3 of the fire department, or roughly a third of the police department, or all of the general fund portion of the public works department. I would submit to you that none of that works in reality. And that is why, though the general fund transfer is lawful, though the general fund transfer has developed over a period of time as a means of shoring up a tax base that is locked essentially in time, and because it funds so many services that ultimately accrue back to the residents and businesses of this community, as opposed to if this were an investor-owned utility, it would simply make its way back as a dividend to stockholders. It makes sense to transfer this amount into the city's general fund.
Well,
and just to put a point on that presentation, as Mr. Garcia said earlier, made a reference to it, when the city of Glendale was first put together, it's obvious to me that the people who chartered this city knew that having a business enterprise like an electrical company and a water company would bring revenues to this city. Burbank felt the same way, so did Pasadena, Torrance. There's so many cities that decided to do it. Others didn't, and to this day they're stuck with Southern California Edison. So to me, I mean, historically there's no question that's why this water and power division of the city was started.
For my part, even before I was elected to the council in 1997, I knew most of this. I got what you call the Cosmot report that breaks down all the taxation of every city in Southern California. And it clearly showed we had less taxable revenue in the city. And I remember distinctly speaking to the Chamber of Commerce early on. They wanted to know who the new kid on the block was. And I casually made a statement, well, one way to create additional revenue would be a business license tax. And I was crucified. I just said that's a method. I didn't say I was supporting it. And a former council member said over his dead body, there wouldn't be any. So we've operated on a very slim taxation mode. Back in my first 4 or 5 years before the number shown here, that the total transfer was somewhere around 10 million. That wasn't much. But there were causes. People wanted more services and wanted this and that. And it's climbed up to 20. So now it's taking it back down slowly. But in the times we live in today, the new reality, it's going to take longer to bring it back down to 10 million or less. But it's all what the people want. You want the service and stuff, and we don't have the taxation. What's going to give? So, and where you're coming from, Mr. Ochoa, I think you've explained it clearly. We don't have a lot of options, and I don't see the public backing large tax increases on themselves, not today. So I do have 2 cards on this. My colleagues would like to hear the public. Okay, Arizavos, 2 minutes, followed by Mike Mohill.
Mayor, my name is Harry Zavos, and before my time begins, could I have my slide put up on the TV screen, and can you leave it there until I've completed all my remarks? Council, the resolution you're considering relies on Article 11, Section 22 of the Charter. The language you see on the screen, with the exceptions of the words highlighted in green, is the language from the resolution as it appears on the city's website. The language in quotation marks, including the words highlighted in green, is the actual charter language. Let me read the language from the charter. at the end of each fiscal year, an amount equal to 25% of the operating revenue of the Glendale Water and Power Department shall be transferred from the Glendale Water and Power Surplus Fund to the General Reserve Fund. By eliminating the charter reference to the surplus fund, the resolution suggests there are no limitations on GWP transfers. But as you can see, the charter places two limitations on transfers. First, they can only come from surplus, from monies left over after all the utility needs have been met. No surplus, no transfer. Second, of the surplus, if there is any, only an amount measured by 25% of the utility's operating revenue can be transferred. Removing this charter reference obscures the fact that the city's current practice is transferring regardless of surpluses. Now, with 2 minutes, I can't go into the elimination of the word reserve, so let me just say this. I've looked at the 1941 resolution when the City Council first put on the ballot the authority to be voted on by the people for the transfers. And that resolution expressly indicates that the council on that transfer was intended to come out of surplus from the utility and then only out of a portion of the surplus. And that's precisely what the charter says. A portion of the surplus, if there is any, gets transferred, and that portion is measured by the operating revenues of the utility.
Thank you. Mike Mohill?
Council members, my name is Mike Mohill. I wasn't going to speak on this subject matter, a very important subject matter that Mayor has decided to only allow the public 2 minutes. Yet he can spend a half an hour talking about the nominations to the different commissions. I only have about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. Let me start off by saying, Mr. Ochoa, I was a salesman for 27 years. And sir, you did a fantastic job of selling yourself in the transfer from the GWP into to the general fund and into the pockets of our city workforce, because that's where all the money is going. That's the unfunded money that we're talking about tonight, and we've talked about it many times. Because if I don't recall that our founding fathers never had salaries and pensions that are 90% of a fireman's last year of working, or a policeman, or manager getting 75%. That's where all the money's going, ladies and gentlemen. It's unfunded, and that's why they need to transfer all this money out of the GWP. This is a backdoor tax. The voters voted no on Charter B, and this city council has trying to do an end run on it. It's not about the revenue from Proposition 13, ladies and gentlemen. It's the expenses this city continues to make because the unfunded salaries and pension. The voters in April had a chance to vote out Nigerian and Freedman. They chose not to, and tonight we're seeing the results. They're going to approve the transfer of millions of dollars out of the GWP into the general fund, into their supporters, the firemen, the policemen, the manager, all the city employees. But the voters who voted no for these people, we get the government we so deserve. And this transfer tells me, unfortunately, the voters were blinded when they voted for the two incumbents. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
I have no more cards.
I'd like to add that the voters voted no on Mr. Mohill's ideas, not once, but twice.
Thank you, Mr. Quintero. Do you want to make a motion on 8C1?
Yes, I'll move 8C1.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Jarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Lost him.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye.
That's a yes.
Ah.
Yes, Sinan.
I hope you two are relaxing wherever you are. Okay, now we'll go to 8D.
8D is Director of Finance regarding adoption of the City of Glendale's 2013-14 GAN appropriation limit. D1 is a resolution adopting 2013-14 appropriation limit of $225,299,458.
And this is something we do annually, according to state law.
Yes, sir. I'm not aware of any city that's ever hit its GAN limit, but we need to do this just to light the lights and say that it's done. If you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Elliott would love to illuminate you on who Paul Gann was and why his limit is something we have to look at.
To me, it's totally meaningless anyhow. With that, is there a motion? I have no
We'll
comments.
move the item.
On 8D1. Thank you. Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Now 8E.
8E is Director of Finance regarding adoption of the fiscal year 2013-14 City of Glendale budget, citywide fee schedule. E1 is a resolution adopting a general budget, enterprise budgets, and other miscellaneous budgets for fiscal year 2013-14. E2 is a resolution establishing certain fees and increasing certain fees for various services provided by the city and adopting a comprehensive citywide fee schedule for fiscal year 2013-14. E3 is a resolution establishing certain fees and increasing certain fees for public works, community development, and fire-related service permits and certificates for fiscal year 2013-14. E4 is a resolution establishing classification titles and compensation for employees of the City of Glendale GMA and GMA exempt classification. And E5 is a resolution establishing classification titles and compensation for employees of the City of Glendale executive classifications.
Thank you. Mr. Cho, you have a brief?
Extraordinarily brief, especially I'm guessing you want to hear from Mr. Elliott more than you want to hear from me at this point, so I will only say that after 4 study sessions, a public hearing, and now the adoption tonight, I think our finance group and all of the budget liaisons have done a fine job, not just in putting together a document that's infinitely readable, especially as you look at the popular comprehensive annual financial report that trails the budget, but also in adapting to the new vernacular that we have as we look at budget by way of strategic goals and key performance indicators. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Elliott.
Okay, Mr. Just before you speak, the public all knows at home, every department of the city is represented here. All the people that worked on the budget are sitting in the front row. So that Mr. Elliott do a brief presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. First of all, I want to say a shout out to all the staff, my staff that worked tirelessly this year on the budget, as well as the budget liaisons in all the department. It's quite an effort to bring this to you. Very quick, and we've covered a lot of this. I'll do a quick recap of the general fund and what we've gone through, and just hit some of the highlights as we go through this brief PowerPoint. As you recall, we had a number of study sessions this year, starting May 7th, concluding on May 28th with the 4th study session. We brought to you the hearing on the 11th, and tonight is the adoption. Within those study sessions, we covered the general fund, the organizational profiles, revenues, and fees. We had a follow-up on our workers' compensation and insurance funds. We went through the revenues in the capital improvement program and touched on all the different funds and fund types, including the enterprise funds. So to briefly recap, the general fund, we've seen this before. Again, our total budget for the general fund in terms of resources is $170 million. The key item here to note is we're using the extra property tax we got this year to fill the remaining gap that we had in revenues for 13-14. Similarly, on the appropriation side, $170 million. These are the budget we started with and all the different changes we made to the budget this year in terms of increases in the different categories. Again, bringing to you a balanced budget in the general fund of $170 million. So looking at the broader budget, citywide, the total appropriation is $737 million, broken out into these fund types. Again, general fund are $170 million. Special revenue funds, where we accumulate and report all the activity for primarily our federal grants. Debt service funds, where we accumulate resources to pay down our debt. Capital improvement funds, self-explanatory. Enterprise funds include water, electric, sewer, refuse, parking, and the sports or parks and rec enterprise fund. Internal service funds, we spend quite a bit of time talking those. Those are operate like a business, except the only customer is the government itself, but includes items like our insurance fund, our workers' compensation, our medical benefits, our information services, and our fleet fund, to name most of them. So again, as we saw in the earlier presentation, this is the breakdown by department within the general fund. You have seen this numerous times as we've gone through and highlighted the detail for each department. Again, coming down to the $170 million. During one of the study sessions, we went through a number of the different fees and highlighted the various notable fee increases, but to break it down, there was 34 proposed new fees divided up in these different departments. We discussed 17 proposed fee increases, again, by the various categories. And then the categories where we applied the CPI adjustments for automatic increases.
It's worth noting at this point we have gotten a good deal of feedback in the last several days from residents primarily of the Ross Moines neighborhoods, and generally anybody in the preferential parking areas that are not in the immediate area surrounding the Brand Boulevard of cars. One of the fee adjustments that we were bringing to you was the increase in the preferential parking fee from $6 to $25 and a series of modifications to that program. I would defer to Mr. Golanian if you have any specific questions to refresh your memory, because that program did come to the council prior. What I want to bring up, though, is that and Rubik, correct me if I'm wrong, the actual fee increase would, if it's approved tonight, would kick in on January 1 of 2014. So if there was a need to do additional outreach, additional education, particularly with the Ross Moines neighbors, we can do that between now and January 1. To the extent that we did it with the neighborhoods abutting the Brand Boulevard of cars, that is where it's really been most congested, and that's where we spent the bulk of our time in terms of putting that program forward. So I don't know if we have cards on that tonight, but I know council has been contacted, so we want to make sure we put that out there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, because we didn't do outreach. It is a huge jump, even though we're basically charging what it cost us to administer the program. But we should do that.
Okay.
Let me add one more thing, which I discussed with you. There's another option open to the public. These preferential parking areas have been in existence over 30 years, which I didn't even know. It hadn't been increased in 30 years.
33
years. And the cost of anything 33 years ago, not even close to comparing to what it is today. But there is an out, because we hear, well, the college built a parking structure, therefore we don't need preferential parking on our streets. Very simple. All you have to do is get, the 66 2/3 percentage of the people on any one block to ask to discontinue it. Then you won't pay a single dollar. Your choice. Cost of living, so we can recoup the cost of doing the business or opt out. I think that's pretty fair.
And we can do that over that 6-month period as well, sir.
Okay, got it. Mr. Najarian?
I agree with some of the comments that the fees for the permits have not been increased. They do reflect the true cost of administering them. However, it appears that some of those zones may be obsolete, and they may be disfavored. So, to the extent Mr. Quintero's comments, your comments, Mr. Ochoa's comments, I think we have until January to do that.
Just get the word out to it. We've got plenty of emails you can respond to with those options.
I'm sure they'd be happy to discuss.
Opt out. Oh, yeah. Save some money. Okay, Mr. Elliott.
And lastly, just to recap, water and power, you've seen this slide several times in our study sessions. Again, the adopted budget for water, power, and the public benefits fund. As we move forward, we have adoption tonight. We will bring to you the first quarter update on November 19th, and again, the mid-year update in February.
That's it.
That's pretty much it. We've gone through the study session As we've noted before, we have structural balance, or working towards structural balance. There's a lot of unknowns as we move forward, but I think the good news is the economy is improving, and we're continuing to look at streamlining our operations as we move forward. So with that,
And that's what we've been working on, even with Mr. Starbird here, structural correction in the city. With the economy the way it is, it's not going to be Fat City in great years to come. In fact, now I hear the term, it was the Great Recession that we're going through. We had the Great Depression, now we've had the Great Recession. I don't know what the difference is, but that's what they're starting to call it. So that I have two cards.
I'd just like to make a statement before we hear the speakers. Much of our budget is going to salaries and pensions and benefits. Those salaries, pensions, and benefits are negotiated. They cannot be unilaterally reduced, withdrawn, cut, slashed, etc. by the council. Those that say that pensions are too high certainly reflect a growing sentiment in this nation. The problem is that the solution is not easy, and it cannot be draconian. It must be done with a negotiated effort, and to assume otherwise or to criticize otherwise that council should just cut salaries, cut pensions, cut benefits is taking an unrealistic view of the issue.
And if in 1997, I first got on, if I had tried to hold salaries, pension, and benefits to the workers of this city, and all the other cities around were doing the same exact thing, giving raises, I'd either been recalled, ridden out on a rail, or I would be scared to drive home alone. We had to compete every year, and we went through extensive, long negotiations on every cycle of raising or considering salaries for the MOU. Not easy. We had to fight with all your associations to keep it down, keep us competitive, because we want to keep the best people in this city. We always have. It would have been nice if we could foretold the future, what was going to happen. It's nice to go into hindsight and say, well, you should have known. But I don't know of anybody alive that had those kind of visions. Maybe there were some out there, but virtually every agency, state, local, federal, doing the same thing, dealing with their employees, giving them fair increases in salary and pensions and benefits. And now, because of the economy, virtually every city, county, state, federal, are all cutting back as much as they can legally. We're all reacting in the same way. No city stands up to anybody else in trying to do this. We're just riding the tide. Did you say that's about right?
Yes, sir, but I'm sure you are too, very proud of the achievements of our folks.
Oh, yes.
When you look at return on investment, the numbers that came back on the police department, for example, one of the top 5 cities in the state, top 10 in the nation for safety, a Class 1 fire department, a leading-edge library system, all done on that revenue base and all done with employees that are, as we're seeing in the surveys we're getting back, are tired, are weary, because you've seen their numbers drop from 2,000 down to the lowest levels in more than a decade, pushing 15 years, and they are still coming to work wanting, not just punching a time card, but wanting to deliver that level of service. Our folks do an outstanding job.
I've said it many times, I'll continue to say, you're doing much more with less. Council's not unaware of the frustrations with staff, the demands being put on you. My God, we wish we could do more in compensation for the workers of the city. But the reality is, if we don't have the revenue to do it, we can't. And I know you've gone without pay raises or given more back in terms of pension contributions and health. We know that. Those are great sacrifices because most of you have families. So we can't say enough. We are terribly aware. So proud of you. The people at home just got to realize what you do. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's see. These are on, oh yeah, now I got to go with it. Okay. Since this has been beat to death over the past few months, so first speaker, Mike Mohill, 2 minutes, or followed by Herb Milano.
Council members, my name is Mike Mohill, and all due respect, Mr. Weaver, I prepared a 3-minute speech, which has been the standard operating procedure since I've been coming to City Council for about 6 years. You know, we have countries throughout the world, they're dying for democracy. Syria, Iran, Egypt. People want to speak. And here we are in the city of Glendale. Mr. Weaver, you want to be the new dictator of Glendale. I'm embarrassed to say you are our mayor. You can't allow a most important subject, the budget, and you can't allow me 3 minutes. The people in the city wrote to the Glendale News Press, I understand, about your behavior. Is that a responsible response from what you did to me last week and you, Mr. Quintero? 2 minutes for the most important subject, the budget, and transfer of money from GWP to the general fund, and yet we can spend over a half an hour on the nominations to boards and commissions in this city. Where are our priorities? Oh, I'm sorry. We have the best employees that money can buy. Let's see, we had Randy Adams, went to City of Bell, and Glenn Steigert, GWP manager, who left. What's the excuse you guys used him? Oh, he kind of like left. Or was he fired? For what reason? The truth will set us all free. So don't tell me we get the best that money can buy. No. But you have to have a fireman and a policeman get as much money when he retires as he gets when he was working. That's not fair. People living on Social Security today with less than $15,000 a year. And we have millionaires leaving this city. That's why there's no money in our budget. And a 3-minute speech is not allowed anymore.
Thank you. Herbert
Going
Milano.
forward, I guess that's the new rules and regulations. Thank you for informing me, Mr. Weaver, by
Milano,
not saying
please.
a word.
Council members, my name is Herbert Milano. I was at home watching the proceedings when I detected a certain amount of misinformation being given to the public. This information that was reapplied during this budget study agenda item. You do not really have a balanced budget. Not so long as you have to borrow money or take money away from the Glendale Water and Power, and then borrow money by the Glendale Water and Power so that they could have sufficient funds in order to maintain the infrastructure. You don't have a balanced budget. That's fiction, and you haven't had it for a very long time because you've been putting us into debt every single year. The bottom line is that pay and benefits have far outpaced anything that has been out there. I know you tried to poison the well before we actually came over here to speak, but that's part of the process in which you present your fallacies. If I were to take the pay and pension of someone 10 years ago, adjusted for inflation, and do it now, you far exceed it significantly. When you add the pensions and the guarantee, most people don't know that we guarantee the amounts of money that goes into the CalPERS pensions, and don't tell me that you cannot do anything about it, because you can. You can go back to a private ambulance service and get rid of all that significant amount of overtime that is being overcharged to the city by the fire department. Yeah, we want a safe environment, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have a safe environment before. If I were to take position by position on every management position, you far exceeded the rate of inflation by position. If you add all of the amounts of money that I added with regard to pensions and benefits, it's even greater than that. The amount of money that we received from property tax since Prop 13 had far exceeded anything having to do with inflation. 3 times the rate of inflation, because when properties are sold, they are reevaluated, and you didn't say that. You were untruthful, Mr. Ochoa, totally untruthful with regard to your presentation. Anyone who's interested in getting this thing right should join the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. I have forms in here because we need to put the truth to you.
Thank you. I have no more cards. You want to
Well, I think it's important just for folks to know.
Okay, Mr. Cho, if you want to respond.
Just very quickly. When we use, or when some people opt to use, the rate of inflation as the best and perhaps only means of identifying what you should be paying and how you pay and how you compensate, that is a complete and total fallacy.
I only had 2 minutes to speak.
I
only have 2 minutes to speak.
It does not exist.
You're done.
In a realistic, operational, practical means of employing and running an organization. It just does not. We could look at a number of things. The notion of inflation is a snapshot, but it's not the only snapshot. If you looked at property values and what they were 30 years ago and what they are today for a single-family home, folks have done well in this community. When you look at the type of employment that has come into this community and what the jobs that are attracted, what they pay, when you look at the market between all the as you had indicated, Mr. Mayor, all of the various positions that we fill, and when we look out to the market to see what does a police officer cost, what does a firefighter cost, that is the best, the composite of all of that information is the best way to understand what our true costs are and what those true costs ought to be. Now, you've heard Mr. Elliott, myself say that our goal is to achieve structural balance, and we have operational balance, and we are approaching structural balance. So there is a kernel of truth in what Mr. Milano, that's what he said. But the idea being that a rope does not make a cowboy. If we come back and say that we have transferred funds from GWP as we have for generations, and yet we will still do capital improvements by way of debt finance, that's no different than any other corporation. And at the end of the day, I would submit to you that this is a public corporation, a municipal corporation as defined in law. So what you have done is take very aggressive steps. I wish I could say it was only since the time that I've been here, but through this council's vision and leadership, through previous administrations over the last several years, you are where other cities aspire to. Now, you can say that, some folks can say that it should be much further, but that would not be reality. No organization has their employees paying as much into PERS, and I would submit to you that very few, if any, organizations are wringing the level of productivity out of those employees the way that the city of Glendale is doing. Unfortunately, just being passionate doesn't mean that you're accurate or correct, and that's easy when you're sitting in the cheap seats, but here making policy for the city council, you have that obligation, that onus to make sure that you do know what it is that you're doing, and based on the study sessions that you've had in public over the last month and a half, you've done that due diligence.
I warned you not to talk. Okay, I have no more cards.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing, sir. Just in the interest of being absolutely and completely forward on this notion of the parking. When I said that the preferential parking would kick in January for all current parking permit holders. So the whole universe of people that have preferential parking permits, they are effectively have a grace period between now and January 1 of 2014. If a new person that does not have a parking permit comes in, they will be under the new permit structure. So if the council wishes to have that grace applied to everybody, then as Mr. Garcia had indicated to me, we have to change the resolution.
They would come in.
And just so it's clear, Mr. Mayor, the people who have permits, their permits are valid until December 31 of this year, so they're good, and then they won't have to pay a new permit fee until January 1.
Okay, well, anybody coming in knows ahead of time what it is.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ochoa, for just a point of clarification, it won't be a new person. It has to be through a petition process for a given street.
Sorry, yes.
A what?
A new neighborhood.
Yeah. 66 2/3 for the neighborhood. Okay, can we move all these resolutions at one time?
You may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion to move 8E, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Second. 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
Thank you. Now we'll find out who's still there. Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Jarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Unanimous vote. Thank you all, staff. All stayed for this. Thank you for the work you people did for Mr. Elliott and for the council. Very much appreciated. Okay. Now, are you two at home going to stick around? Laura? Zari, are you going to stay around?
No.
Yeah, go ahead. Good. What time? It's 11 o'clock there?
It's pretty late, and I must say that New York is much hotter, I think, than Los Angeles, and the humidity is about 120%.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, have a good evening in an air-conditioned room.
No air conditioning here. Okay, thanks.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
And Mrs. Zarian?
I'm also going to log off.
You're leaving too. What time is it?
It is now almost 7 a.m.
Oh, so you got up at 4 or 5 in the morning for this.
Yes, I
You're to be commended.
It's one way to start the day.
I'll give you a mayor's commendation for what you did. Good night, sorry.
Okay.
Good morning.
Or good morning. Good morning.
Good night to you all.
Thank you. Okay, we're back to 3. Now, we're back to 7A. Right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 7A has already been read into the record, but I'd ask that you have the clerk read in 9A as well for the public hearing.
So you want to do
9A.
do we move first?
Well, Mr. Kasakian already read 7A into the record, so I'd ask that you ask him to read 9A into the record. And then
Okay,
we'll hold
and
the
which
hearing.
one will we act on first?
The ordinance first, and then the resolutions.
Wait, 7, there's ordinance, okay, 2 resolutions, and then 9 is a resolution. You want the 9 resolution adopted first.
I'd like, that's correct. Well, no, I'd like the ordinance at 7A after
yeah.
it's been read into the record, and then the resolutions at 9A1 and 7A1 and 2.
Okay, we'll figure as we go. Please read 9A into the record.
Under hearings, 9A is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding adoption of fees to implement City of Glendale feed-in tariff program. 9A1 is a resolution adopting new fees.
Okay. I have one card on 7A. I don't know what component of it.
I'd recommend you just take them all at once. Comments on either one.
Yeah, I am. I only have one card. 2 minutes. Tim Jenk, right?
It's Jim Yennel with Run-On Sun
Oh,
from
I'm sorry.
Pasadena.
That's an M.
You
Sorry.
open the hearing, Mr. Mayor.
Jim Jenk. Excuse me?
Open the hearing.
And opening the public hearing, in case that's it.
So, all right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Last week when staff from GWP brought forward to you the feed-in tariff proposal, they mentioned to you 2 other programs in Anaheim and Riverside as part of the basis for their design of their program. Those programs have been in place for 2 years. Would you like to know how many systems have been installed under those programs? None. Not one. Not one in 2 years. Why? Because the rates are so low that, as the gentleman in Riverside told me, they designed it that way. They don't want it in the city. That's what he told me. He told me that there's no way it would be economically profitable to build such a system in their city. That's where you're headed. Staff told you that they have no choice, that the statute compels them to do the formula that they did. But it doesn't. If you look at what the statute says, it says that they shall consider avoided costs amongst other components that they shall consider. It doesn't give you a strict formula. If it did, DWP couldn't do what they've done. Okay? So I know you're going to adopt this today because it's basically a pig and a poke. You have no choice. You have to pass this. State law requires it. But do this. Okay? Come back to this in 3 months. If this is a successful program, it'll be subscribed. And then I'll be wrong and it won't matter. But if in 3 months no one's bit on this hook, maybe it's time to come back and readdress it. As the woman who's administered, sadly, the program in Anaheim for 2 years without it doing anything said, there's a difference between designing a program to meet the letter of the law and designing a program that'll work. All you've got is a program that meets the letter of the law. Come back to it in 3 months and let's get one that works. Thank you.
I'm sure staff will consider your thoughts on it, and
Most
well,
certainly.
look,
I mean, we would
thi-
intend to come back and evaluate.
Yeah, this gentleman continues to make a very good point, in my opinion. Now, Steve Lynn's come to the podium again because he refuted that gentleman's contentions last week. But are we, in fact, complying with the law, but no one is going to subscribe to this? I mean, is that what's going to happen?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Steve Lenz, Chief Assistant General Manager for Glendale Water and Power. As the gentleman mentioned, the legislation says we shall consider those things, but it also says that the rate that we provide in the tariff has to be cost neutral to the customers that aren't taking advantage of the tariff. And so cost neutral is avoided cost. And that's what we've come up with, and that's what the law requires. Now, the ratepayer advocate in L.A., and L.A. comes up a lot, has been looking at that rate and saying that they're paying way too much. And in fact, a review of the L.A. tariff that came out just June 19th, the ratepayer advocate estimates that L.A. is paying $240 to $260 million more than they should be to those projects. You could divide that by 20 to get to a Glendale number, and that would be us paying $12 to $13 million more than we should be paying to the developers of those projects. The customers would have to subsidize that through a rate increase. So the rates for those projects are coming down. I think what the gentleman's really saying is that his project is not economic relevant to our rates. And when his projects are economic and competitive, then those projects will come to Glendale. And that will happen over time as those costs come down.
Competitive in terms of what? Competitive in terms of our renewables, or competitive in terms of the overall?
Well, it sounds like what he's saying is that rate doesn't allow him to get a profit on the project that he wants to build here.
Not a suitable ROI for him.
No, but you talked about GWP. We have one rate for renewables in general, whether it's wind or whatever it is, and then we have the other rates for all of the other.
Well, the rate that we're offering in the feed-in tariff is actually much higher than we pay just for renewables, because it includes avoided costs for transmission and avoided costs. It's basically our complete avoided cost, carbon cost, avoided cost. I mean, one way to look at it is right now we pay about $75 for renewables. That's 7.5 cents. You know, if you were paying what LA was paying under their feed-in tariff, that would be like paying $170 a megawatt hour. Well, the market's down at 75, 80, area for renewables. So the bottom line is utility scale renewables are much more economic than these smaller scale projects, and those costs will come down, and in time the projects will come in. And in fact, the ratepayer advocate at LA also cites in his recent review that the PUC, who sets the rates for the state, the IOUs, has set their starting rate at 8.9 cents, which is right about where we're at. And so the costs are coming down, and those projects will come in time. And as the gentleman mentioned last week, there's some projects now at a certain scale that already are economic, and they'll come in bigger scale. So,
thank you. There's no more comments.
Okay, I have.
But wait, I want to find out what Mr. Garcia, which one he wants us to do first.
Mr. Mayor, I suggest that the ordinance be moved and adopted at 7A.
At 7A, okay. Mr. Quintero?
The ordinance at 7A.
Second. Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Sinanian. Mayor Weaver.
Aye. What do you wish next?
And Mr. Mayor, I suggest you close the hearing on item 9A, and then
Close the hearing on 9A.
and then items 9A1, 7A1, and 7A2 can be taken together.
Thank you. Is
I
there a motion?
will move all three of the items.
Second. Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Sinanian. Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Now we'll go back to the regular order that we had. Next item in, please read it.
7B.
7B is ordinance amending sections of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995 relating to civil penalties and attorney's fees for code violations, administrative code enforcement remedies, administrative cost recovery, and abatement of public nuisance. This was offered on June 18, 2013 by Councilmember Quintero. B1 is a resolution adopting administration citation fine amounts, and B2 is a motion directing staff to take necessary actions to implement the administrative citations ordinance, including starting the procurement process for administrative hearing officer, billing, and administrative services.
Okay, I have no cards. Do we need to be reminded what this is by staff, or you want to make a motion?
I will make the motion.
If we could have, I'm sorry, just 7B moved first, and then the resolution, the motion separately.
I'll
Okay.
move 7B.
Second?
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Harrow,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye.
And then
Now-
7B 1 and 2.
Move 7B 1 and 2.
Second?
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Harrow,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Next, please.
Under action items, 8A is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding Edison School Pacific Park Artificial Turf Project in connection with spec number 3471. A1 is motion authorizing execution of First Amendment to the Operation, Maintenance, Repair, and Renovation Joint Use Facilities Policy and Agreement. A2 is motion authorizing amendment to agreement of covenant conditions, restrictions, and reciprocal easements between City of Glendale and GUSD in order to conform it to the First Amendment to the Operation, Maintenance, Repair, and Renovation Joint Use Facilities Policy and Agreement. A3 is a resolution appropriating $70,000 to fund the artificial turf project. And 8A4 is a resolution adopting spec and directing the city clerk to advertise for bids.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, a project very near and dear to the council's heart. I think I've heard from all five of you as to when this project is going to get underway, and we're happy to present it to you tonight. Mr. Duran will provide a very brief PowerPoint, oh, there it is, and talk about this great enhancement at Edison Field.
Well, considering how brown the field looks on this
Yeah.
photograph we have compared to the Little League field, which is green, I think it's about time.
Yes, Mayor Weaver, members of the City Council, it is about time, and we're very happy that we are finally at a stage where we are ready to go out to bid for the artificial turf project, which, of course, as you know, is located at the Edison Pacific campus. By way of quick background, the Pacific Park and Edison Elementary School campus was the first joint use development project between the City of Glendale and the Glendale Unified School District, and it was completed in 2003. The 10.5-acre site includes a park, a pool, a library, a multi-purpose gymnasium, a community center, a community health clinic, and the elementary school. Beginning in 1999, in order to jointly develop shared use projects, the City and the Glendale Unified School District executed a master agreement and a project development agreement. Then for each site, such as the Edison Pacific project, the City and the Glendale Unified School District execute a site-specific joint use agreement which addresses each party's responsibilities for operation, maintenance, repair, and renovation, in addition to each party's respective financial and joint use, financial responsibilities and joint use schedules. At this time, in order to proceed with the artificial turf project, a First Amendment to the joint use agreement is required in order to revise and update the terms that address the joint use schedule, joint use areas, and joint use costs. The current joint use agreement, without the amendment, would require the GUSD to equally share in the cost of the renovation of the field. But for the purposes of the turf project, in May of 2011, city staff proposed using CDBG funds as Pacific Park is a primary CDBG eligible park to pay for 100% of the turf project, which was approved by the City Council as part of the fiscal year 11-12 CDBG annual plan. Under the amendment to the joint use agreement, except for the initial turf construction, future renovation costs will continue to be shared by both parties based on the percentage of actual use and impact to the artificial turf. In addition to the joint use agreement, an existing companion reciprocal easement agreement is also needed to be updated and modified to make it consistent with the amended joint use agreement.
Yes, excuse me a second. Are there supposed to be these that are going?
It's coming. So in terms of the artificial construction project, this is the aerial of the existing campus, and you You can see the location of artificial turf. This is Vine, and this is Kenilworth. This is the shared playground, the picnic pavilions, the baseball field, the pool, the school and the classrooms, the multipurpose gym, and the community center. In terms of the multipurpose field, the city and GUSD jointly use the field now. The city has use of the field daily during non-school hours, weekends, and during GUSD breaks. The field is rented to youth leagues, adult leagues, and private groups. The department does expect that use by all leagues and private groups will increase significantly as a result of the artificial turf, and the department staff expects to add a civic league, which we currently don't have at that field. And we've mentioned several times the high demand for more and more soccer fields in our community. In terms of the scope of work, it will include the demolition of the existing natural turf, the grading and drainage improvements, installation of the turf on the existing multipurpose field, installation of security fencing and gates, and construction of bleacher seating and improved accessibility to the field. The current estimated cost to complete the project is $870,000. And again, this is a graphic of the field layout. And again, well, the project schedule. Assuming we receive approval to bid this evening, we will receive the bids in August. We will award the contract in early October and execute the contract in early November, begin construction in early December, and be completed by April of 2014. This is a very conservative project schedule.
Now, let's hope you have a dry winter.
Sorry?
Let's hope you have a dry winter.
That's what I was going to say. I'm dismayed by the timing.
You'll do the prep work before you lay down the AstroTurf in the dead of winter.
We'll hope for that. At this point, we're available for any questions that the council members might have.
That was my comment. Mr. Najarian.
There are no lights planned for that field at this point?
They're existing.
Yes, there are existing lights. There are no improvements to the lights as part of this project.
Okay, I'm very, very happy that we've reached this point. I think it's been needed quite a while. I guess what took longest was dealing with GUSD and putting the agreement together.
Negotiations, yeah.
The last time I visited that site, it was a dust bowl. Turning out some tough soccer players because it's hardcore, hard-packed dirt. But it's going to be oversubscribed. But fortunately, with this and the indoor soccer, I think we're really going to improve the quality of life for little kids and adults and teenagers and everyone else. So.
How many soccer fields can you get on there? One?
One
adult one?
Well, it's not regulation size, but it's only one field.
If you turn it the other way, can you put two, what do you call it, young peoples or whatever?
Not without encroaching onto the existing school
Just wondered.
property.
Mr. Najarian.
You know, it's turned into quite a attractive park. I don't want to say little park. It's quite large with the soccer field, the year-round soccer. I agree that it's so overused now that the ground is just impacted. The Little League, picnic area, basketball courts, of course the swimming pool, and the open plaza there. It's really something to be seen. I'm not sure if North Glendale has anything quite like this. I would venture to say it does not, because there is not a swimming pool. The only swimming pool that we have is located now in South Glendale.
It's the epitome of multi-purpose.
Right. Well, I'm very happy to see this.
Yeah, the gym is used. I mean, everything from the local Muslim community uses it at times for worship and picnics. All of our civic things that we hold there. It's a great location.
And the only other one we used to have above the Civic that I used to swim in as a teenager, the keyhole pool. In all their wisdom, they tore it out because they had a crack and put a parking garage in its place. Real forward thinking.
with transit. This is transit accessible. It's on our Beeline route, so this is about all. And it packs a lot of punch for.
There's two motions and there are two resolutions. Can we move them all at one time?
All right, I will move the two motions.
1, 2, 3,
and
4.
two resolutions, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second. Okay, roll call.
Seconded by Councilmember Najarian. Thank you.
Yes, better be.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Caro,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Next, please.
Next item on the agenda at 8B is City Attorney regarding City Council meeting schedule for fiscal year 2013-14. Motion establishing its regular meeting schedule and canceling specific council meetings for fiscal year 2013-14.
And Mr. Choa, to clarify ahead, this only regards the night meetings of the council, not the housing or success or other meetings in the afternoon at 3.
That's correct, sir. Those meetings that you would normally have for design review, for example, those would still occur in those afternoons.
It's your report, I guess.
Essentially, we're just trying to streamline the workload for council and for city clerk and for management services staff.
I would imagine you're going to cut down a lot of staff meetings on Mondays and Wednesdays, all the preparation work that the city clerk's office has to do, a lot of other things. They can consolidate the work better and get the days after Christmas and New Year's and all the others that fall on Monday off. I know what a crunch it is when you have a council meeting after a Monday holiday. So I think they're always good. I guess we can always call a special meeting of the council if we need to anytime.
Yes, sir.
So with that, is there a motion?
I'll move 8B1.
Second.
That roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. So the 9th, the 2nd and the 9th of July, we won't be here. Next time we'll see you will be the 16th of July. We will be here in the afternoons of the 2nd and the 9th. Thank you. Next, please.
Next is 8F, General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding 5-year supply contract of proprietary water treatment chemicals at the Grayson Power Plant. F1 is resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing 5-year supply contract with San Joaquin Chemicals, Inc. in the amount of $71,000 a year and a total amount of $355,000.
Okay, I have no cards. Anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Friedman, Najarian,
Yes.
Caro,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Next, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the council may question or respond to a speaker, but there'll be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
A spot recess. We're down to 2 council people. We don't have a quorum, so once left the room. As soon as he's back, we'll go. I have 7 speaker cards. Seven times 5, 35.
Just lost quorum.
If he's in there more than 2 minutes to get that glass of water, get him.
Still, the microphone's still on.
I know. I don't care. I have 8 speaker cards.
One more.
With that, 8. Okay, first speaker, Gary Zalrabian, followed by Karapet Aneshian. I said that right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Gary Zorabian. I'm here to talk about Glendale Water and Power's skyrocketing prices. We have a lot of other bills to pay besides GWP. During the campaign, all of you talk about this agenda. You know about it, but nobody talked about it. That's a stab in the back.
Just take your time.
Nobody talk about this until you guaranteed your seats. GWP is not preparing anything. GWP is not building anything new. What GWP is doing? Building their pockets. And if you approve tonight or any time about the GWP sky hike, you are building their pockets too, your pockets. Excuse me, but the truth always hurts. You are on that seat for 4 years only. Another election is coming. Thank you for understanding me.
Thank you. Next speaker, Karapet Maneshian.
He's not in the chambers?
He's not. Well, to the side, Gavork Tabakian. Your name for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Kevor Tabakian. I live in Glendale 25 years. I am in America 4 years. I like that bus run near my home. There is no bus close to my home because I cannot drive like I used to. I like to stop to drive car. And I like the bus has to become a little closer to my home. On Kenneth Road is the best road for me, is closer. That's what I want.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want his address, anything, in case anybody wants to respond? Okay, that's one over. Next speaker is Anka Zodari. Well, at least you write very neat. I can actually read your name.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City staff, and public. My name is Monica Zaduri, and I am an Armenian National Committee of America Glendale chapter intern. We constantly hear that plastic bags are detrimental to the environment, but in order to have a desire to establish change, we must obtain a further understanding of the matter. About 100 billion plastic bags are used every year in the U.S. alone. Once used, plastic bags often travel into our oceans or arrive in our landfills. Some suggest that plastic bags be burned in order to avoid such routes, but even when they are burned, they release toxic fumes into the atmosphere. The worst attribute of a plastic bag is the fact that it is non-biodegradable, which entails that it will remain in the ecosystem for extended periods of time, causing further damage. The decomposition of a plastic bag takes up to 400 years. Within this time, animals mistake these plastic remnants as food and end up ingesting them, which leads to their unprecedented death. The plastic bag, however, remains intact even after the death and decomposition of the animal. Unfortunately, it floats around awaiting its next victim. Two classified plastic-related chemicals are of critical concern for human health: bisphenol A, or BPA, and phthalates, an additive used in the synthesis of plastic. BPA is a basic building block of polycarbonate plastics, such as those used for bottled water, food packaging, and other items. Since the 1940s, BPA has been recognized as a disrupting chemical that is said to affect normal hormonal function. Since the 1940s, then why is it taking so long to ban the usage of plastic bags? There are ways to recycle plastic, but it would be reincarnated as itself. Thus, it would make it counterproductive in a sense. Eventually, it would still end up in the ocean where it could harm numerous life forms. Also, these methods happen to be labor intensive, so does not prove to be cost effective for the producer. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a trash vortex located in the North Pacific Ocean. The patch contains the area in which currents collect excessive amounts of garbage due to gyres and current seas. We constantly hear tales about the magnitude of the patch, but in actuality, scientists are unsure of its size. This is worse because we could be unintentionally undermining its size. The compiling small islands of trash make this issue a complex one that is difficult to fix. Often we tend to neglect the fact that not only are the plastic bags toxic, but affecting the marine life, but in turn, they have an immense impact on our dietary intake as well. There are no environmentally friendly benefits of plastic bag usage. In fact, its endeavors are merely capitalist. With Glendale's new eco-friendly perspective, the greedy ideology that promotes maximizing profit while cutting costs must be left behind with the usage of plastic bags. Producers must become more environmentally sound, while consumers must be willing to accept these regulations and realize it's for their overall well-being as well. Change is often uncomfortable, but we must keep in mind life begins at the end of our comfort zones. Overall, the ordinance tends to be a step in the right direction because it enables us to start small, commencing with the building blocks necessary to establish a greener community. Thank you.
Wonka, are you advocating we do away with plastic bags?
Yeah.
You should have been here a few months ago. We already did.
I know. July 1st is the first. 2013 will be.
Oh, so you're just following up on that? Yeah.
I'm just doing
When's the effective date? We're doing the education process now. July. You're right on target. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike Mohill.
Good evening, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. It's been a couple of weeks since I last addressed the City Council on issues that concern me and others. And of course, as Councilman Quintero would say, the voters in April soundly defeated me and my ideas. This is from a person who was appointed by this council to be a council member and not by the voters. I would humbly like to inform Mr. Quintero and Mr. Weaver that I have received several phone calls asking me to continue fighting the good fight. Mike, you are a voice, and the letters supporting me in the Glendale News Press have only encouraged me to continue the good fight for honest and justice for all. In the June 18 letter to the editor of the Glendale News Press, Peter Roosh, Glendale resident, said it best when he said, quote, "The public shaming of citizens who wish to speak has been honed to a fine craft by Weaver, both in body language and audible comments he makes when his mic is open. Quintero, now a lame duck stand-in, obviously thinking he has nothing to lose, only recently added fuel to the fire with his shameful chastising. In my opinion, just as disturbing were the other council people and city staff who smirked and remained silent while the bullies prevailed. Is it any wonder, with bullying from council members, that few residents have the courage or nerve to come before the people's legislative body and express their feelings on issues of concern? We must bring this attitude to an end and to restore the public trust in our government. We live in a democracy, and as such, we should encourage more people, and not less, to be involved in their government. Since council members expect respect from the people, they too must show respect from the, Since council members expect respect from the public, they too must show respect to the people and not lower themselves with bad body language and name-calling, insulting comments like jerk, vulture, or dumb-headed, which the public has heard presently and in the past. Going forward, I would like to suggest the following. 1, Mr. Mayor and council members, in order to help restore the public trust and have more public participation, we should return the people's hour, that's the 5-minute oral communications, before city business is discussed rather than after, because people have told me that it is difficult to stay up late. Having late evening oral communication has been used regularly to limit the council critics' influence on the TV viewing audience. 2, agenda items should remain at 3 minutes. I said 3 minutes, unless there are many speakers. The mayor should not arbitrarily change the stated time period as a tool against his critics. Our last 2 city attorneys knew about illegal council actions, the illegal interpretation of the Los Angeles County Grand Jury report, the illegal transferring of millions of dollars from Glendale Water and Power to the general fund, the illegal city charter interpretation that would allow former Councilman Quintero to replace Rafi Manukian, and the knowledge that former Councilman John Draymond had not taken out building permits for his condo remodel. Our city attorneys supported their bosses and not necessarily in the best interest of the people. The above action now brings doubt about the value of council traditional appointment of the city attorney, and I believe going forward we should have the people elect our next city attorney, a city attorney like the city treasurer, accountable to the people and not to the power-hungry city council. Now is the time council members should show the public you care more about the residents of Glendale than the special interests who put you into office. Tonight, let us put away our differences and restore the public trust by putting the 5 minutes portion of oral communications, the people's hour, at the beginning of council business. Make agenda item standard 3 minutes and place on the June 2014 ballot the election of our next city attorney and an independent city controller. And finally, 2 terms or 8 years maximum service for any city council member. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Next speaker, Margaret Hammond. Followed by Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mayor Weaver and city councilmen that are here and staff. My name is Margaret Hammond, and a longtime resident of Glendale, and particularly South Glendale, I guess. And we won the battle on the pool, and look what it did for that neighborhood. It was great, wasn't it? You go by there, it's packed all the time. And those people need it, living in those apartments. Since we have, as I say, 50% of the population of Glendale living in that area. Thank you. The bulky item pickup, which is free, and call 818-548-3916. And sometimes you feel like I wish you could do something about those people who will not call. 617 South Louise Street, going on 4 weeks, have laid lumber. Now a bed, a mattress has been added to it, and some other stuff. I just do not understand why the employees on the trash trucks cannot call in and ask for those items after 4 weeks to be picked up. I am not going to do the job. Why should I go around the whole city calling? But anyway, and then I would like to say, after all Mr. Zern's landscaping efforts, and beautification on San Fernando Road, now it's all being torn up. I'm hoping whatever entity is responsible for tearing it all up, I hope you're going to be holding their feet to the fire and make them replace it at their cost and not ours. I don't know who's doing that work, whether it's the gas company, the train, the whatever, but it's disgusting to see it all torn up again. Now, in Adams Square, which I talked about before, on which the city spent $1 million on the mini park, there exists a parking lot full of cars, a torn tarp on the fence, a wire fencing or whatever it is, etc., etc. Now, is this not a zoning misuse? I've talked about this before, but nothing seems to get done. Across the street from that is the Habitat housing. Now, imagine that. We put Habitat housing in for people to live in a nice area, and then we allow a parking lot full of used cars across the street. Okay, but what really got my goat is that on Thursday, I was cleaning out my van, which I do have a lot of stuff in, there's no doubt. I'm mobile bag woman, I guess. And within an hour, there turned up an inspector from Neighborhood Services saying that he had got a complaint, and I know it's from a nasty neighbor next door, that there was trash being dumped on the front of my house, which wasn't true. I was cleaning out the trash from my van and putting it in the trash can the day, I guess it was the day before the trash was going to be picked up. But it just shows you the difference, that lot can lay there for all that time, the other trash, but within an hour, I have an inspector at my door. And not only that, are you going to make sure that's picked up before the end of the day? Hello, you know what I felt like telling him to do, don't you? But anyway, that's another thing, another way for whatever we can do. Now, the other thing I want to mention is, the parklet that's going to be put in over there on Brandon, California. The funds from the KAB, Keep America Beautiful, your Clean and Beautiful committee are the ones that pay the fees to Keep America Beautiful. And that was one of the reasons, because we have done such a good job with our committee in the smoking ordinances, the basket ordinances, all that the city got through with our urging, that they decided to reward us. And that was where the $20,000 came from. I just thought I'd let you know. And then to finally finish off my nasty little whatever here today, I hope it wasn't too awful. I just bring things to your attention that people talk about and say, why does this keep going on in our area? That there are other places it's picked up. It isn't picked up around ours. It lays there, and I know the people are lazy or they don't know how to use the phone or whatever it is, and that's why the trash isn't picked up. And then my last thing is, I want to ask Mayor Weaver how he enjoyed the fan club in the News Press Forum on Saturday from the fan club. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Herbert Milano, followed by Bill Wiseman.
Council members, my name is Herbert Milano. It is difficult to start the process of trying to set this process right, meaning that the manner in which we have public input and a dialogue be commensurate with the dignity that this council should proceed. One of the most common deficiencies that I see continually week after week is the fact that we really do not have any kind of discussion. We can come in and make a presentation, present an idea, present a concept. We sit down and it's negated, but we don't have a chance to basically set the record straight, as we saw here today. There is no discussion. You may discuss between yourselves, but you never discuss with the public. Because what I often see are a range of fallacies that you all practice. Let me give you some of them. The ad hominem attack, attacking the person once he sits down. I've seen Quintero do it multiple times. Mr. Weaver, you've done it several times, and other council members. The person who comes in to express a point sits down and then he's attacked verbally. The excluded middle. You make a presentation, it's either this or this, but there's nothing in between. You do it all the time. Appeal to tradition. Well, it's because it's been done like this, then that justifies it, irrespective of the impact it may have on the public. Appeal to emotion. Adverse consequences. Well, if we don't continue doing like this, this is what's going to happen. Instead of arguing the merits of what is being presented. A red herring. We present one argument, you answer another. The slippery slope. If we continue like this, then this is going to happen. That's not necessarily so. Stacking the deck, putting all the arguments that are in your favor, but never accepting or acknowledging an argument that does not support your arguments. Exaggeration. Overstating the issues. Now that we have critical thinking being taught at Glendale schools, I'm thinking of basically approaching Clark Magnet School. talk to Mr. Doom's class and have those students sit over here and then come back during oral communications and set you guys straight. Because that's what you do. You do it today, Mr. Ochoa. You do it with regard to the arguments of Proposition 13. The arguments or the presentations made here in public and in other public venues, Mr. Weaver, is really quite foreboding. When you stated, and I have the copy of that video, that you have the feeling to come out here and punch us out, it's a very telling emotion as to how you feel about the issues that we bring up. What issue that I have brought up in the past 13 years are deserving of that type of attitude? Quality of life indicators? To find out exactly what the conditions are of people who are poor, who don't have the opportunity that everyone has, and where there are no after-school programs, or not sufficient programs in the parks. Is that deserving of that kind of attitude? For how many years do we fight to get that swimming pool out there after Mr. Najarian made the promises that that was going to be one of the first things he was going to promote? If it weren't for Margaret Hammond and myself hammering here all the time to bring that up to fruition, and then we got this tiny little pool. Issues about traffic congestion, issues about the fact that you've given so many parking variances to so many builders that now guests of many people who live in multifamily parking have no place to park, especially on days where we have the trash pickup. On the issue of the bulk item pickup, you ever tried calling the bulk item? Try it. It's the most horrendous system I've ever seen, and then at the end of the whole prolonged 3.5-minute tape, it tells you we're not going to call you to confirm that we're going to pick anything up. It tells you right there. It's a horrific system. If I come in to complain concerning the, let's say, the new system using the iPhone in order to take a picture and so forth, no response. I tried it 3 times. So we come and tell you from minor things to major things. Issues about the budget, issues about overspending, issues about the pay and pension obligations. All of those merit discussion, but we don't have it. So here is my deal. I challenge any of you to a debate. How about you, Mr. Najarian? Want to talk about the budget someplace in public on television? How about you, Mr. Ochoa? I will discuss the budget against you anytime. You came as a highly paid city manager on the strength of your knowledge about finance. I'll challenge you to a full debate on this city's budget anytime.
Well, let me make one comment.
Microphone.
Okay, you go first.
Let me start with Mr. Milano. Mr. Milano, talk about.
No, we do it.
You're going to walk out.
Quiet.
Let the.
See, you've lost it.
That's an ad hominem attack for anyone who is keeping score.
He's lost it tonight.
Mr. Milano
Lost it tonight.
is walking out yelling and
Escort him
saying
out. That's right.
that I'm not a council member. I was actually elected 3 times. But he started his discussion talking about dignity. Now, that's a kind of dignity that we've been subjected to all these years, you know. And then he talks about there's no discussion. No, there's plenty of discussion. I've said it before. When the public comes to this podium, we listen to them without a doubt. However, for now we have Mr.
Come back, Mr. Mohill.
Mohill, yeah. Mr.
Come back.
Well, he's leaving too.
I'll be addressing Mr. Mohill next. But anyway, all we get from Mr. Milano, all we've gotten for you student interns sitting there, all we've gotten throughout the years is nothing but attacks. Nothing but attacks. That's all he does. He distorts statistics. He overstates the issue more than once. Years ago, him and Mr. Mohill both talked about the city. Generally, we were going to be in bankruptcy. We were going to go down the tubes. It was all over for the city of Glendale. We're still here. We still have a reserve. Everything is functioning. That is all we've heard from Mr. Milano. He has charged the podium at times. But then the irony of this guy talking about no parking in multifamily neighborhoods. But he is the poster child for that. He is the investor and landlord that bought an apartment that literally ruined a neighborhood here in Glendale, as so many other neighborhoods were ruined. That was his investment. That was the first time that he came to this podium to talk about rent control. He didn't come here to fight for the pool. I don't remember him fighting for any pool. He came here to protect his investment in that apartment building without adequate parking, I might add. So anyway, now he wants to debate the budget, et cetera. He ran for city council twice or 3 times, I forget.
Twice.
Anyway, numerous debates. Well, he obviously lost, so I see no reason to really debate Mr. Milano. Now, I'm glad you stayed. I told the people at home that you left, Mr. Mohill, but you're still here. Well, look, what I pick up from you, not in the beginning, but after a while, you're the one that comes across like a bully, my friend. You're the one that's always accusing, mudslinging, talking about all of the things that the city council has done. Bribery, corruption, all of it, all of the above. That is what you've done. That is what you've done for many, many years. You also have run for city council, and you've lost. And so I keep pointing that out because you talk about the people. Well, the people are turning down your ideas. Certainly you have the right to come here, but the idea that you somehow speak for Glendale and for the downtrodden of Glendale, I don't think so. I don't think you do. So that's my comment.
And I just like to state, sat here 17 years, been taking the rap from the gadflies for 10 solid years now. If I had ever thought that was what's going to happen when I wanted to serve the community I was born and raised in, I wouldn't have done it. The assault on my wife, on my family, my daughter, and me personally over the years, it's unfathomable. Now, we don't hear it here because this is polite. Let me just read one simple 3-word statement from Mr. Milano in writing. He doesn't say it here. He refers to the city council as Satan's greedy core. That's what we are, Satan's greedy core.
That is cold-blooded.
Now, people at home, this is the guy that gets up here and says, we're not being polite, we're not listening to him, so on. I got a lot more of his written comments about me and all of us up here. And if he or Mr. Mohill or any others keep this up, I'm going to pull one out of the drawer every week and read what they're putting in writing about what they really think about us. Having said that, then they want to come and say, listen to me, be nice to me, discuss with me. After this kind of stuff, you wonder why I want to come down and punch them out. 10 years of this repetition over and over, belittling. It's terrible to accuse me of assaulting my wife. Jeez, right. Where's the proof of anything like that? We've been married 45 years. And my dear, I wish you a happy birthday tomorrow. To get up and knock, you want to knock me, fine. But you start hitting on my family, my wife won't even watch council meetings anymore because of these kind of attacks. You want to do it on me? Fine. I've got a hard shell now. But when I get up here and try to say, gotta watch, forget it. Oh, excuse me? One more card? I know, but we speak after each speaker now, not at the end.
And I think my colleagues are being a little too hard on Mr. Mohill. He did have a gem of an idea today, and that is to elect the city attorney. See, if we put that on in 2 years, that way people that hate me and want me off council will vote for me to be city attorney.
I know.
And my supporters will vote for me to be city attorney, and I win both ways. And if I lose the election, I'm still on city council anyway.
But dang it.
I like that.
After
that.
Mr. Manukian, success as treasurer, why not? That's an idea. Thank you. Thank you. You planted the seed of thought. Okay, our last speaker, Mr. Wiseman. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, unless you were to take a strict construction approach to that particular charter provision.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. You got me.
Good evening, Mayor Weaver, City Council members, City staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I thought I would maybe end the evening on a lighter note by just announcing some breaking news, which is that as of about 15 minutes ago, the UCLA Bruins have won the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska.
What was the score?
8-0.
8-0
against Mississippi State. They went 10-0 for the series.
They didn't lose a single game.
And did not lose a single game. So not only are the UCLA Bruins the best college baseball team in the city of Los Angeles, but the best college baseball team in the United States of America. And with that, I bid you all good night. Thank you.
And may I add, USC has won more national championships in baseball than any team in America.
Yeah, I move we adjourn.
That's the past.